Hello, my name is Nancy Guy, and I serve as the Assistant State Director of Adult Education for the state of North Carolina. In North Carolina, Title II adult literacy funds are awarded to the community college system, which distributes them to a variety of community colleges and other literacy providers throughout the state. Since the COVID-19 pandemic prevents our conducting an in-person bidders meeting to announce the availability of funds and our competition, my college and career readiness colleagues and I have prepared a series of video clips to introduce and familiarize you with our request for proposal document and the application process. The clips are organized and titled according to the content contained in them, so you can watch all or selected topics of your choosing. You will see on the title page of our request for proposal that this particular Title II Adult Education and Family Literacy Act funding period is for the years 2021 through 2025. In this particular grant application packet, which we are going to be reviewing, you will find information and the process described for applying for three different funding streams. The first is 231 Adult Education and Family Literacy Act funding. The second is 225 Corrections and Other Institutionalized Individuals funding. And the third is 243 Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education. Next, we'll take a look at what the actual rest of the document is going to look like. When we get to the table of contents, you can see that it is organized around a variety of topics. First of all, the availability of funds. It then proceeds with an overview of regulations, general guidance, and as you glance down over this table of contents, you can see it also includes the various things that you need to respond to as prompts. It also describes how you would apply. It describes how you have to submit a budget narrative and a budget. It references each of the three funding opportunities that I just mentioned. But for my purposes today, this first clip is only going to cover the first pages through page 9. So let's take a look at what comes next. This document is the formal announcement of the availability of these federal funds. The funding authority for this source of revenue for our programs is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, commonly referred to as WIOA, which was signed into law in 2014. As I mentioned earlier, the funding years begin July 1st of this year and run through June 30th of 2025. Since we are not able, as I mentioned previously, to have a bidders meeting, this particular overview and the document itself will be posted at the site listed. Who is eligible to apply for these funds? I'm going to read you this in the hopes that you will hear your organization or agency in this list. Eligible applicants are organizations that have demonstrated effectiveness in providing adult education and literacy activities that may include a local education agency, a community-based literacy organization, or a faith-based organization, a volunteer literacy organization, an institution of higher education, a public or private nonprofit agency, a library, a public housing authority, a nonprofit institution not described previously, and has the ability to provide literacy services to eligible individuals, a consortium or a coalition of agencies, organizations, institutions, libraries, or authorities described previously. Or finally, a partnership between an employer and an entity described above. All funded providers are expected to meet or exceed the state negotiated target for measurable skill gains. To be considered an eligible applicant, demonstrated effectiveness is required. Demonstrated effectiveness is a requirement for the AFLA Title II 231 grant. Eligible applicants must submit a fully completed application to be considered for funding. We are now announcing, as of the 27th of January, 2021, the availability of funds. The application deadline is March 24th, 2021 at 5 p.m. All application inquiries must be in writing and emailed to the attention of Nancy Guy, Assistant Director of Adult Education. Now let's take a look at the overview of federal regulations and state regulations. The Workforce Opportunity Act was signed into law in July 2014, and it created a new vision for how America prepares an educated and skilled workforce. The 21st Century Public Workforce Development System is meant to build closer ties between business leaders, state and local workforce development boards, labor unions, community colleges, nonprofit organizations, organizations that serve youth, and state and local officials to deliver a more job-driven approach to training and skills development. Adult education programs need to enhance and develop new, innovative opportunities through increased collaboration with core and non-core partners in creating and accelerating career pathways. By leveraging each agency's strengths and resources, each WIOA partner can do what it does best to contribute to a more robust service delivery that will increase performance and program outcomes. The State of North Carolina Unified Plan articulates these priorities. You may find the State of North Carolina Plan at the site listed. The North Carolina Community College System Academic and Program Services Division College and Career Readiness Unit will award multi-year grants on a competitive basis to eligible providers within the state of North Carolina to develop, implement, and improve adult education and literacy in the state. Funding is contingent upon the availability of funds from the U.S. Department of Education. So let's look briefly at the application instructions. Using this application packet, an applicant may apply for one or all three Title II funded grant opportunities, which I mentioned earlier. All applicants must submit Parts 1A and 1B to be considered for review. Part 1B includes the grant application narrative, which we refer to as the 13 considerations. Please note the 13 considerations will satisfy the narrative requirements for the AFLA 231 grant. Additionally, there are supplemental questions which must be completed if you wish to seek 225 and/or 243 grant funding. So what do you need to submit for the AFLA 231 grant? You must submit the budget document, you must submit the budget narrative, and you obviously must submit the answers to those 13 considerations, which I just mentioned. Each funding stream application must be submitted as one separate PDF. So if you want to only or also apply for the Corrections and Other Institutionalized Individuals grant, applicants must submit the following materials: the 225 narrative supplemental questions, the 225 budget document, and the 225 budget narrative. Each funding stream application, as I indicated, must be submitted as one separate PDF. If you choose to apply for the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Grant, applicants must submit the following materials: the 243 narrative supplemental questions, the 243 budget narrative, budget document, and the 243 budget narrative. Each funding stream, as I have reiterated, must have an application submitted as one separate PDF. Let's take a look at other aspects of applying. All Title II 231 adult education applications are required to be aligned to the WIOA local workforce development board plans within the workforce development region. The adult education application will be reviewed by the local workforce development boards in which the adult education provider serves students. The local workforce development board will review the adult ed application to ascertain the extent to which the application addresses the adult ed and literacy needs identified in the local workforce development plans. An evaluation will be provided by the local workforce development boards, indicating whether or not the applicant addresses the adult education and literacy needs identified in the local plan. The evaluation provided by the local boards will be included as part of the overall review process. When that process is completed, the grant applications will be returned to the North Carolina Community College System College and Career Readiness section for evaluation by external grant reviewers. Each application will be evaluated using a rubric addressing the 7 requirements and 13 considerations of the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act, Title II. What is the application review process itself? A maximum of 52 points may be earned on the 231 application. A minimum of 36 points must be earned for the application to be funded. Each application will be read by a team of individuals who are professionals in adult education and literacy from outside the state of North Carolina. These readers will independently review and score each of the applications assigned to them. Their scores will be submitted into the reviewer's portal. And next, these scores will be averaged by the CCR compliance team, arriving at one final score for each 231 application. Reviewers will not provide written comments about the application responses submitted. The scores arrived at through this process are considered final and may not be appealed. If in fact you want to apply for the Corrections and Other Institutionalized Adults funding stream, referred to as 225, a maximum of 20 points may be earned through answering these questions, these supplemental questions. A minimum of 14 points must be earned for the application to be funded. Each application, as I stated before, will be read by a team of individuals who are professionals in adult education and literacy from outside the state of North Carolina. These readers will independently review and score each of the applications assigned to them. Their scores will be submitted into the reviewer's portal and then averaged by the CCR compliance team, arriving at one final score for each 225 application. As with the other application review, reviewers will not provide written comments about the application responses. The scores arrived at through the process are considered final and may not be appealed. And finally, if an applicant wishes to submit a grant application for the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education funding, sometimes referred to as 243, those supplemental questions may earn a maximum of 20 points. A minimum of 14 points must be earned for the application to be funded. As with the other two funding streams, each application will be read by a team of individuals who are professionals in adult education and literacy from outside the state of North Carolina. These readers will independently review and score each of the applications assigned to them, and their scores submitted into the reviewer's portal. Next, these scores are averaged by the CCR compliance team, arriving at one final score for each 243 application. Reviewers will not provide written comments about the application responses. The scores arrived at through this process, like with the other two applications, are considered final and may not be appealed. All documents related to the Title II competitive grant application process, including all three funding streams, and referring to the application and review materials themselves, will be maintained for 5 years from the date of the application in a secure location at the North Carolina Community College System office. Next, we'll just look at some application submission guidelines. Some of this we have referred to before, and some of this is here for emphasis. The application submission deadline is March 24th, no later than 5 p.m. An application must contain all required materials and be submitted in the portal indicated on this document. Applications not received by the deadline on March 24th will not be reviewed. Additionally, a hard copy of the grant application will not be accepted. What is considered an application, and what must you submit for it to be complete? A cover page, a demonstrated effectiveness screening tool, all memoranda of understanding with local workforce development boards, signed federal and state certifications and assurances, a signed GEPA attestation, the grant application narrative, the section budget, the budget narrative, the job description for the data manager position, and finally, a sample instructional schedule, which would include information for considerations 5 and 11, which would be contained in the narrative. Let's take a look briefly at the grant application timeline for this grant funding cycle. The RFP release date, obviously, is January 2021. The guidance is the date January 27th, in which these video clips will be available. The grant application is due to the North Carolina Community College System, the CCR office, through the portal March 24th. The demonstrated effectiveness screening and application completion review will be conducted by March 31st. Applications and evaluation rubrics will be sent to local workforce development boards April 7th. And the deadline for those local workforce development boards to return the rubrics to the North Carolina Community College System office are April 21st. The evaluation period by the outside grant reviewers will be April 28th through May 26th. And grant awards will be made with an effective date of July 1st, 2021. Next, we're going to take a look at the actual cover page. Here, you need to put the name of your agency or organization where it says eligible provider, On the second line, program director, you would simply put the name of the person who is responsible for the program for which you're seeking funds. The next line, you need to indicate the email address for your agency or organization and the person therefore responsible. Next to that is the phone number at which the program director could be reached if necessary. And in the next line, it references the local workforce development board region. What you need to do is look at this listing of all the 100 counties in North Carolina. You need to select all of those in which you provide services. And based on what your responses are there, you will know what local workforce development board region you are in. After you have completed identifying the local workforce development board region and the counties, you will see the designation eligible provider. Select one. You are to click there, as you can see, and indicate which of these type of organizations or agencies do you work with. You must select only one. So whatever you feel is your best response there, simply select one. If you do not, in that listing, find a description that you think adequately describes what it is your agency or organization would be identified as, simply enter that information where the designation of other is located. That concludes the overview, the introduction, and the general outline of the Title II WIOA grant application.